Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, this is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is the Question Guy podcast. And I'm here with Stephanie Prentice, and we're going to talk about something really, really important. As you know, I spent a lot of time in season two talking about leadership. And so we're going to take a look at leadership. We're going to define it, and then we're going to talk about its difference between what we really want to call a leader and, without pointing fingers, what a C-suite leader may or may not be based on how they're approaching that titled position. Stephanie, welcome to the conversation. Tell our audience today who you are and what qualifies you to give a talk on leadership.
Hi, Keith. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. My thoughts on leadership is there's definitely a distinction between being in a role that calls for leadership and then someone who's truly a leader. And what I feel like qualifies me for this is I have been in leadership roles, but I have also made it a point to be a true leader to those that I work with. I've gotten some positive feedback on kind of how I implement it and how I do things. And I've also worked with middle management, C-suite executives and things of that nature. And I've had some good experiences and I've had some not so good experiences.
So let's go ahead and define, or for this conversation, at the very least, let's define the term leader and what we want to talk about in terms of leadership. Earlier in our conversations, you mentioned the humanity aspect of leadership. And I think as I'm having more and more conversations with leaders, whether they're coaches or C-suites or entrepreneurs, there is a consciousness shift, I think, since our COVID experience worldwide, that's really saying we need to rethink what a leader is and how we're defining it, because there's a disconnect. So let's define it. How do you want to define what a leader is for this conversation?
To me, what a leader is somebody who inspires those around them and underneath them to bring out their highest and best. It's somebody who encourages them, who is able to recognize their strengths and is able to build upon those, but is also able to recognize and correct any areas that need to be tweaked.
You mean for them personally?
Yeah, for them personally.
Okay.
But they also are willing to look within themselves, right? That they are very self-reflective, that they are willing to take the responsibility of the team, and that they are willing to share their knowledge and their wisdom and build other leaders. So it's also somebody who will take, radical accountability for their actions or their policies or whatever's going on. And if they see an issue, that they are the first ones to kind of start brainstorming and try to come up with a solution. They are very solution oriented and not problem focused. They also will ask of their team members. They'll ask their input. They care what other people think. They make sure that others on their team and around them feel heard and considered, whether or not they implement their ideas or not.
So you mentioned quite a few things, and I did not write anything down, as I typically do, and that's okay for this conversation. So I'm going to do my best to come back and reflect on each of those, but I want to add the fact that I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and so I post almost daily, and rather recently, I would say over maybe our recent holiday, Christmas season, right, 2022. And I made a post on the necessity of reflecting, or personal reflection, that leaders it needs to become a habit. It needs to be part of your personal agenda to one, know yourself, and two, reflect upon your actions to making sure that they have the appropriate outcomes that you're looking for, right? And people really need to do that. And I got some negative pushback on that, and I wasn't quite sure why, and I kind of let it go. I kind of let the individual You know, I just kind of smiled and wished him a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and all that kind of good stuff. And actually, I was really kind of surprised that I was going to get that kind of pushback because, like I said earlier, my conversations with people are iterating exactly what you're saying. And so there's definitely a need for some personal reflection. Can we talk about that a bit and what that really means and how one can develop the habit of reflection and know what we need to really reflect upon?
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, I'm I guess I would say I'm a little bit surprised you got the pushback too, but self-reflection is so critical in human development,
Mhm.
and then also that goes into professional, right? So if you don't have personal experience at something, or if you don't have experience with some job or whatever, then how are you going to perform in that position if you get hired on? You're not. So you have to reflect, okay, what do I know really well? What can I do really well? And what can't I? And then you acquire the knowledge and the education and move forward. And if you want to continue to get better personally and professionally, you have to stop, look at what you've done. Does this align with my core values or my corporate values, character, principle, and what I'm saying? Do my actions match that? Are they in line with that? Because I've had the experience where I'll have leaders that put out all this wonderful leadership material, and I'm like, all right, they get it. This is going to be sweet. I can't wait for this. And then their actions
Right.
don't even reflect even a modicum of what is on the printed material. And that's disheartening.
And so I'm going to cheat a little bit, and only because I've recently published a book, and so I have to, you know, get that word out every once in a while
Yes,
that I
and
can.
congratulations.
I appreciate that. And so, walking the path, right, a leader's journey, and I talk about the value of reflecting and through the scope of social consciousness, just like you were talking about, there needs to be that alignment. And so we typically have seen this as a structured policy within an organization or even within a person to say, yeah, this is who I am on the surface. But on the back end, you know, they say and do things that are inconsistent, and I'll use that word, are
Yeah.
inconsistent with policy or inconsistent with what we see. And that creates problems. It creates distrust. It creates frustrations. And I'm talking about from the people who are in one way or another, either working for or, you know, on equal planes or just associated with the individuals who are saying one thing but are doing something else. In your experience, is that true? Are do people become frustrated or angry or resentful, or they just blow it off and say, yeah, this is what I expect?
I would say, unfortunately, for the most part, the majority of people just kind of, they will behave that way. And a lot of people that are underneath them or work around them just kind of tolerate it to the best of their ability, even if they don't like it. But sometimes they can get kind of sucked into the negativity.
Hmm.
Because
You
I
mean the
mean,
people around?
correct,
Okay.
correct. And so, yes, I've seen people get resentful and frustrated. And that just coming out of the pandemic, that again creates greater disconnection, a greater lack of community.
Mhm.
And it's super detrimental for the company. And it's difficult, I think, to get people to really see that we keep going further and further and further away from where we need to be.
And for you, that word is humanity.
Yes.
And because we've talked about that. And so some people call that, and for the sake of our conversation, I'll leave names out, but I can add them if I needed to. Spirituality. And so there is a need. I'm hearing and having those conversations for this. I don't want to use the words over and over again, but I don't have any other true words for them, either humanity or spirituality, an essence of connectedness from those in leadership positions to those who are either following or are impacted by the decisions of these people. What, how do you see that as being an applicable to leading?
Well, you're working with human beings, right? So it's important to understand human nature at its heart, because we all experience, the spectrum of emotions, right? And you can't take the person out of the company. Just like if you're working with dogs, you better know about canine behavior, right?
Right.
Um, but it seems like that people are losing the importance of understanding psychology and personality and conflict resolution, and that's huge, and that leads to further discord. And I know that companies have been just super inundated with everything that they need to do because of the pandemic, right? And so there's a lot of distraction
Mhm.
in the workforce. And so we're losing sight even more. We're losing more ground of bringing kind of the human element back in. And we're trying to draw these boundaries so hard and fast, but human nature is not hard and fast. It's not black or white. It is very gray. And there's got to be some sort of compromise where people can still be people to a certain degree in the workforce. It's important that they be able to express themselves to the degree appropriate without being concerned about any backlash, right? Or any negative consequences for just being who they are. It's incredibly important to have diversity of thought for problem solving. But sometimes that's discouraged, right? They want more, like-minded, cookie cutter, same people, do this job this way, be like Gary and do it this way and just toe the line and do it that. But it's like, okay, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face, because you're not going to get outside the box thinkers if you want cookie cutter. And then you're not going to get top tier performers if people can't be expressive and are allowed to have a little bit of latitude in their positions.
So I'm going to name call. And he knows I'm going to do it anyway. Mitch Craig, I always get the camera lined up. So here's his latest book, and the book is about 2 years old now, How to Hire and Keep Great People. And he speaks to the same, he speaks to the same ideas that you are, and we're having in this conversation, meaning that you have to reach out to the human in your humans around you, and you have to understand where they're coming from in order to allow them to grow into the people that you want on your team. So there's going to be times where things fall apart and fail, and you support them, and you encourage them and you build them up. But there's also the aspect of human behavior. Human behaviors act in a very human way, and there's no other way around that. And
Mhm.
without people in, again, those leadership positions, recognizing that they create chaos, they create frustration, and I'm using my words very carefully.
Mhm.
They create disconnect in the workplace. And so, but the other side of that is we still need to get things done. So the real question then is, if we know that we need to, and I'm going to put his book down, otherwise he's going to think I'm cheating. Because I've got all kind of books on leadership, because every time I have a conversation, somebody wants to share their book, and I said, share your book with me. Let's talk about it, and then let's dig a little bit deeper.
Mhm.
But how do we balance the humanity of leading with the accountability and responsibility of getting things done? Any, because that's a balance. It's like a balancing act, even in our
Yeah.
personal lives, but more so in a business, because if you don't get things done, you know, you don't make money at the very
Mhm.
end. Yeah.
Right. I mean, some of the things that I've seen that I think could be helpful are companies that are putting on more like social events to gather outside the office and outside the workplace. I think that's huge for building connections. And sometimes when you're in more of a social setting, someone might feel more comfortable communicating what's going on in the workforce. I think that also brings a sense of belonging and community, which I think that's a part of human nature. Everybody wants to feel that. They need that. Mm-hmm. Human beings need a sense of community. Right. So I think that's one way to do it. I think another way is there's got to be more check-ins, not necessarily HR, but managers and persons in leadership in the C-suites kind of understanding maybe we need to start implementing a check-in. Maybe monthly, maybe weekly, but just
talk to me about that. What is that? Because I talked with somebody else, and I'm going to call them out in just a bit. But what do you mean by check-in? Talk to me about that.
Kind of like maybe a weekly review or a monthly review. Hey, how are things going? How's this project going? Is there anything you're struggling with? Is there anything I can help you with? Okay. What do you see that you're doing well? What do you see that you need to improve on? And have a dialogue about it. It's not, okay, I'm going to write you up. It needs to be more open door policy. And also people in leadership positions need to be watching out for clicks. I mean, I've been in such toxic work environments where it's almost like a middle school. It's so cliquish. And if somebody thinks this, then nobody likes them and whatever. It's like, stop. This is a workplace, and everybody, first off, every human being has value, in my opinion. Right. And there's something everybody has to bring to the table. And work is work. You're going to work with people that you may not like, right? Mm-hmm. Or may have different thoughts than you have, different beliefs, and that's okay. You can learn how to work together with people regardless. And we just need more leaders to see that and bring about some camaraderie for the team.
So I am going to add, his name is Lieutenant Colonel. He's retired Army, Oakland McCullough. And he and I had a couple conversations. And one of the things he taught me was, he said, don't let somebody else get you your coffee. And I know I'm butchering that, but the idea behind it is, when it's time for you to go get your coffee, go get it yourself and walk around the space that you're in, know how people are, understand the environment that people are working in, understand who they are. And on your way there to the coffee pot, wherever that is, stop by and just not even on a, what's your project and is there things that I can help you with, but, how's your wife? How's your kids? How's your car? And things like that. And then on your way, and then on your way back, the same thing. Get to know your people as the people that they are. And it doesn't have to be, all inclusive that, my grandparents died and, I'm going to their funeral, that may be part of it. And if it is, you have to be supportive, but it could be easily as, very few people. I have a dog named Benji, and Benji's blind, and now the whole world knows. But I don't tell that to everybody. I'm not looking for, that violin to say, oh my goodness. But for those who inquire, I do have a dog, and last year, he developed what's called SARS, sudden acquired retinal degenerative syndrome, and so he can't see. And so it was an adaptation for me and for him to kind of navigate the house. But it's things like that. It's things like, how's Benji? Which would make me feel good when, I'm communicating, talking with my boss.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I agree with you there. And that's something that I do in my leadership roles. I also lead by example, right? So I would never ask anybody to do something I wasn't willing to do. Not only am I willing to do it, but I will let them see me doing it. Okay. So then if I go back and I ask them to do something or need them to do something, they will see, I'm willing to do it. I will jump in there and help. Something that really blew me away. This is on topic, but off topic.
Go for it.
There was, this was a really positive experience for me, but in one of my positions at a company, there was a C-suite executive that I really watched. I really watched him. I really liked him. I read, the company characters, their mission statement, their core values and all like that. And I watched him, and he really walked out all of that. And I was beyond impressed. He was super humble. He listened well. He was an active listener, and he would jump in to help no matter what. At one point there was this leadership conference going on, right? And there's people in there and they're trying to set up for it. It's kind of like the lowest man on the totem pole work, but he jumped in there with everyone else and was helping get everything ready. And he just didn't do it for 5 minutes just for looks, right? He was in there till it was complete.
So, rolling up the sleeves and getting dirty kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. And I respected him, still do, respected him. I trusted him, which is huge. You've got to be able to trust your leaders and know that they have your best interests at heart, right? The whole team, and that they will sacrifice themselves for the benefit of the team. Sorry, side note. But yeah, that was really huge for me, because I had never seen that per se in a C-suite executive, a man with that much integrity and character and leadership ability. And I was very impressed, and I just really liked the guy.
Well, I was going to ask you, but you just answered the question I had in my head. Only one in your entire career, only one person that exemplified true leadership?
To that degree that
Yeah.
I had the privilege of having that much interaction with.
Oh.
Like, and I think that, that maybe our personalities were similar to some degree. But I was also able to come to him when I disagreed with a decision that he had made. And I said, I would like to just give you my perspective on that, if you would give me the opportunity to do that. And just let me say my peace of mind. And he was like, I will hear you. I will listen. And he let me say everything that I needed to say. And then he was like, I understand where you're coming from and I hear you, but this is where I am. And he didn't agree with me, but I wasn't looking for that. I just wanted to be heard on what my perspective was. And he gave me that. He gave me that platform. He gave me that opportunity. He gave me that privilege to be able to be present, be me, offer
Well,
what I,
wait, well, then can I ask you a personal / professional question?
yes,
What did you learn from that experience?
how important active listening is.
Okay.
How important it is that everybody you interact with, especially at work, I mean, this is just as important in your personal life, but really seeking to understand where somebody's coming from and what they're saying. So don't just knee-jerk reaction. No, that's not what we're doing. Okay, but like this sounds really important to this person, right? So let me hear them out. Let me hear them out.
So in your experiences in whatever leadership roles, and you don't have to, call out names and companies, what is your best experiences? What are your best experiences? Excuse my English. What are your best experiences in those roles that you look back on and yeah, I did it right, right? And then what are those experiences that you can own up to and say, because this is going back to the reflection part that we talked about at the beginning of our conversation. When was, are there times that you knew you screwed up and you had to make amends or make changes? Can you talk to either of those questions?
Yeah. There was a couple of times when I was with this one company and I was doing some intelligence stuff, and I had made an error in the report that I created that was needed timely. And so as soon as I figured that out, I was like, oh no, I got to go tell him, right? I got to go tell him before he finds out from anyone else that that's not accurate. Because I didn't want him to present something inaccurate that he thought was accurate because I made the mistake. And that's humbling and that's awkward. And some people don't want to do that. They don't want to be proactive, but I do believe that's what a leader does. If they know they made a mistake, they're proactive and they go and let whoever needs to know, right? And then what can I do to make it right? Tell me what I can do to make it right. So I've had a couple of experiences like that. And I've also had the converse of that happen, where I've had a leader make a mistake.
Well, this is you talk to me about some things that you did well that you were proud of. Because you're the leader here. You are the person that I'm having a conversation with, and we want to learn from you. So we know now that it's okay to own up to your error. And
Mhm.
you have to. I mean, because that goes back to character and integrity. And also, if you, and it probably in your situation, if you didn't do that and whatever was communicated and it was an error, there would probably been serious consequences to that. There would have to have been. But there's also times when you go back and say, because this is we learn from both sides of the scale, from both
Mhm.
sides of the coin. We learn to fix our errors and we go forward in life, we humble ourselves and so forth. But we also want to emulate the things that we do well, because if we learn to
Mhm.
do things well, we can, continue that process to for its, whatever consequences are, and I've lost my train of thought, whatever value that becomes,
Right.
because that becomes us.
Right.
I know I do things well and I know I don't do things well. And so I don't want to repeat the things that I don't do well, because I want to make things appropriate. And especially when I do these conversations, is that I want to
Mhm.
become a better conversationalist. I want to be able to, my guests to feel comfortable and talk about what they need to talk about and really have a conversation. And so I'm getting better at that. As a leader, where do you know you've made, really good decisions and made the best impact? That's a
I know
lot.
that
That's a lot.
it's okay. I know that I'm a huge advocate for my team.
Okay.
So people who are ambitious and they know what they want to do and they're really taking action on their own to get there,
Mhm.
there's nothing I won't do to help them get there. And that doesn't mean
Does that include
like
like development, like going to school and training, and what does that mean?
no, not necessarily. So there was, I'm trying to think of how to do this without doing this. So there was one individual who was working, I'll just say on site, right? And they the qualifications needed for that particular site were changing, and this particular individual didn't have those qualifications. And a third party was trying to navigate whether they could obtain those qualifications or not, and I guess just made kind of a preemptive decision and decided that that person was not going to be able to obtain those qualifications. um, I looked at it, I thought about it, and I'm like, how do you know that? I don't think that's accurate.
Okay.
And so I told this individual, you go, even though they're not training you, you do whatever you need to do. If you want to go get those qualifications, you go get them, and I will continue to work for you to bring you back here. So if you want
And
to put it to work, I'm going to fight for you. And we got him back.
okay.
And so, we stayed in contact. He let me know what he was doing, and he made a decision. Yeah, I'm going to do it. And he said, no, I changed my mind. Okay. I'm like, whatever you want to do. But if you want to do that, let me know and I will fight for you. Um, so there's a couple of individuals, and that is probably the greatest accomplishments to me, is helping somebody else reach their personal and professional goals. That means the most to me.
Well, with limited time left, I usually try to end my conversations with a word of inspiration, transformation, something impactful and powerful that are, an action item that our audience can take away with. So if you were to give, as a leader, helping other leaders be better leaders,
Mhm.
in 30 seconds or less, what would you tell them? What would be the first thing that they would need to do today, or when they woke up in the morning? This is going to make you a better leader today.
Okay. I would say evaluate, what your character traits are, and then you create a minimum standard for yourself that you must achieve, and you demand that minimum standard for yourself. Then do better, and then strive for the best.
Stephanie, thank you for having a conversation with me. This has been another edition of the Question God podcast, and we'll see you next time. Take care.